Here is the thing nobody tells you about loving your best friend. It is the most efficient form of suffering ever
I have a
invented.
surprise for you.
You get to see them
Oh,
every
what is
single
it?
day. You get to
You'll
be the
see.
person they
I
call
think you'll
first
like
when
it.
something good happens and the person they lean against when something falls apart. You get the history, the inside jokes, the easy silences, the warmth of someone who knows you
right,
better
gears
than
loaded.
most people ever will. You
Ready
get
to hit the road.
absolutely everything except the one thing
Feel
you
the rhythm,
actually
let it
want.
take control.
I
Drumming
had
to the
spent
beat,
4
I'm
years
heart and
perfecting
soul.
this
Singing
arrangement.
out loud, feel them all.
4 years of being Eli Navarro, Marco's best friend. 4 years of birthday dinners and late-night drives and falling asleep on his couch during movies we both pretended to watch. 4 years of watching him smile at other people and feeling something in my chest perform a slow, quiet collapse, like a building that had been demolishing itself for so long it no longer even made noise on the way down. Then Marco called me on a Wednesday evening in early October and said, "Hey, I booked us a cabin in the mountains for the weekend. Pack warm, we leave Friday." No asking, no negotiating. Classic Marco raise. I should have said no. I should have invented a work deadline or a prior commitment or a sudden, convenient illness. Instead, I said, "What time?" Because that is what I always did. When it came to Marco, the word no had never once formed correctly in my mouth. The drive up into the Sierra Nevada took about 3 hours on a good day, which became 4.5 hours on a Friday afternoon with October traffic, which became an unexpectedly long stretch of time sitting 18 inches away from the person I was most trying not to think about. Marco sang along to every song on his road trip playlist, badly, enthusiastically, completely without shame. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel and mouthed the words when he forgot the lyrics and laughed
that
at
bring up
himself
any
when he hit a
memories for
note
you?
spectacularly wrong.
Yeah,
He
it
was
did.
genuinely impossible not to watch. I watched the window instead. The city dissolved into suburbs, then foothills, then the first serious rise of pine-covered mountains. The sky above the ridgeline was a shade of blue that only exists at altitude, deep and clean and slightly unreal, like a photograph someone had turned up just past the point of believable. "You're quiet," Marco said somewhere in the third hour, glancing at me with
I was
that
just thinking
particular
how
sideways
peaceful
look
it
he
is
had,
out here.
head tilted.
Yeah, it really
one
clears the
eyebrow
mind, doesn't it?
raised, the universal Marco expression for "I see you being a whole situation right now, please explain." "I'm enjoying the scenery," I said. "The scenery is a guardrail and a rest stop sign. I contain multitudes." He laughed, that laugh low and sudden, more surprised than performed, and for one
This trail is
completely
incredible.
traitorous half-second,
Yeah,
I
perfect
let
light for a
myself
hike.
feel the warmth
Totally.
of it land
Let's keep going.
somewhere behind my ribs, in the place where I kept all the things I was not allowed to feel. Then I looked back at the guardrail and reminded myself quietly
Tenemos que
of the
apurarnos.
rules.
Sí, el cielo está
The
oscuro.
rules were
Vamos.
simple. I had made them for myself years ago,
We're
during a
almost there.
particularly difficult
This rain
stretch
is
when Marco
crazy.
had gone
We're
through a bad
soaked.
breakup and
Best
spent
run
3
ever.
weekends in a row on my couch in various
We
stages
made
of
it.
heartbreak.
That rain was
I had held
insane.
space
I'm
for all of
soaked.
it,
Me
made
too.
tea,
So
listened,
fun though.
said the right things, and felt guilty for every complicated second of it. The rules went like this. Rule 1, Marco is straight. This is a fact, not an opinion. Rule 2, Marco is your best friend. That
This storm
worth
is
more than
wild,
any
but the pasta
feeling that
smells
cannot go
amazing.
anywhere.
Yeah, it's perfect. Bread's
Rule
almost
3,
ready.
you are
Great.
good at carrying things quietly.
This is perfect.
You have
Just
been
what we
doing
needed.
it your whole
Yeah, it's
life.
so cozy.
This
Cheers
is
to
no
that.
different.
Cheers to us.
The rules
To
had
us.
served me reasonably well.
I've been
for
holding
4
this in
years.
for so
I
long.
intended to follow them
It feels
all
like a weight
weekend.
is lifting.
The cabin was beautiful, which I resented slightly because it made everything harder. It sat at around 7,000 feet, tucked into a grove of old ponderosa pines at the end of a dirt road that the car's GPS had given up on about a mile back. Deep covered porch, huge windows. Inside, it smelled of pine resin and old wood and the ghost of 1,000 previous fires. A stone fireplace at the center of the main room, a small but full kitchen, and up a narrow staircase, a loft with 2 beds separated by a low wooden partition. 2 beds. I had quietly been braced for one. The relief I felt about those 2 beds was honestly a little embarrassing. "This is incredible," I said, setting my bag down and going to the main window. The view opened onto a wide valley going gold and rust and dark red with autumn color, the mountains rising beyond it into that impossible blue sky. It looked like something painted rather than real. "Right," Marco appeared beside me, close, his arm pressed briefly against mine as he leaned to look. "I found it like 2 months ago. I've been waiting for the right moment." I glanced at him, the right moment for what? He shrugged, not a dismissive shrug, the other kind, the one that meant he had something to say but was not quite
I
ready
want
to
to be
say it
honest
yet.
with you.
I don't know, I just
It's
needed
not
a
easy for me
reset,
to say.
and I wanted it to be with you. He said it simply, without drama, the way he said most things that quietly undid me. Well, I said, and my voice only cracked in the most microscopic, professional way, here we are. Here we are, he agreed, and he smiled at the valley, and I turned back to the view before my face could do anything I would regret. That first evening was the kind of evening that makes you believe, briefly and dangerously, that life is manageable. We cooked pasta from what the pantry offered, opened the wine Marco had packed specifically for this trip, ate bread directly from the loaf because neither of us could locate a bread knife and neither of us particularly cared. We took our plates out to the porch as the sky shifted from blue to violet to
It's
the
hard
deep,
to face,
total black of a
but I have to
mountain
be
night
honest
with
with
no
myself
city
about
light for
this.
miles.
It's the only
And
way
then the
forward.
stars came out. Not the handful you can see from a rooftop in the city. All of them, every last one of them, the full, overwhelming, indifferent crowding of stars that most people my age have only seen in photographs.
I know
The
it's
Milky Way
difficult,
stretched
but we
across
have
the
to
dark
face
like
it.
someone had spilled it.
Trust me,
A
this is the
river
right
of light
path.
so thick it almost had texture. Holy, I started. Yeah, Marco said quietly. He had his wine glass balanced on the porch railing. His head was tilted back. His mouth was slightly open. In that particular dark and starlight he looked, there is not a clean way to say this, he looked like everything I had been trying not to want for
I was
4
thinking
years
about our
made
first date.
unbearably visible.
The Italian place, you were
I
so
looked up at the
nervous. I
stars
was,
instead.
but it was worth it.
Does the universe ever feel like it's just being extra on purpose? I asked. He laughed softly. Always, I think that might be the whole point. A pause, then, Eli, can I ask you something? My stomach did its small, automatic clench. Sure. Are you happy? I blinked. Right now, yes. I am currently looking at an unreasonable number of stars and drinking decent wine, so... No. He turned to look at me. Even in the dark, I could see his expression, that particular open seriousness he carried when he was really asking something. I mean in general, with your life, are you actually good, Eli, like really good?
Oh? What is
The
it?
question sat between us, heavier than it had any business being on a relaxed Friday evening. I thought honestly about the answer. The way I had been moving through a life that looked fine from the
All right,
outside,
gears loaded.
steady job, clean apartment,
Ready to
a
hit the
social
road.
life that functioned.
Feel
The way
the
I had
rhythm,
been
let it
so
take
careful,
control.
so
Drumming to the
confidently
beat, I'm
managed
heart and
for so
soul.
long
Singing
that
out
I had
loud,
almost
feeling
forgotten
more.
what it felt like to want something without immediately building a wall around the wanting. I'm working on it, I said finally, which was the most honest thing I had said out loud in a while. Marco was quiet for a moment, then softly, me too. I looked at him. He was still looking at the stars, but something in his face had shifted, some small, private weight behind his eyes that I had not quite seen before. Or maybe I had seen it for years and decided not to look directly at it. Marco. It's fine, he said quickly and smiled, and it was mostly a real smile. It's a good working on it, he trailed off, shook his head slightly. I'm glad we're here, that's all. Me too, I said. And I meant it fully, painfully, completely. Even knowing what the weekend might cost me emotionally, I meant it. We stayed on the porch until the cold drove us inside. I lay awake in my loft bed for a long time afterward, listening to the wind move through the pines and thinking about the look on his face when he said me too, the weight behind it, the something unfinished quality of it, and telling myself very firmly that I was reading into things. I was very good at reading into things. I told myself to stop. I did not entirely stop. Saturday arrived clean and cold and gold-lit, the kind of mountain
bring up
morning
any
that
memories
feels
for
like a
you?
personal apology
Yeah,
from the
it
universe
did.
for every bad day you have ever had. We hiked. Marco had a trail map he had downloaded in advance. Of course he had. The man was an engineer. He prepared for leisure activities the way other people prepared for emergencies. And we followed a path that climbed steadily northeast through stands of pine and aspen, the aspens shaking their small coin-shaped leaves in a wind that smelled like cold water and altitude. I am a graphic designer. I spend most
I
of
was
my
just thinking
time
how
at a desk.
peaceful
My
it is out here.
relationship with physical
Yeah, it
exertion
really clears the
is
mind, doesn't it?
charitably theoretical. Marco knew this and chose not to tease me about it, which was either very kind or deeply suspicious. Pace yourself, he said when we started. I am paced, I said. I was already slightly winded. You are the opposite of paced. I am paced internally. My internal pace is excellent.
This trail is incredible.
He grinned
Yeah,
and
perfect
dropped
light
back
for a
to
hike.
walk beside
Totally.
me instead
Let's
of
keep
ahead,
going.
adjusting his stride to mine without comment. That was a very Marco thing to do, notice what you needed without requiring you to ask for it. It
La
was
lluvia.
also, for the
Tenemos que
record,
apurarnos.
extremely
Sí, el cielo está oscuro.
inconvenient for my
Vamos.
emotional management system. We
We're
talked
almost
as
there.
we walked. The
This
way
rain
we
is
always
crazy.
talked,
We're
easy
soaked.
and looping, hopping
Best run
between
ever.
topics without transitions, following the
We made it.
conversation wherever
That
it
rain
wanted
was
to go.
insane.
His work,
I'm soaked.
My current
Me
project,
too.
a
So
brand
fun though.
identity for a small bookshop that I had been enjoying more than I expected to. An old song that had come up on the drive and lodged in both our heads. The particular smell of high-altitude forest, which Marco insisted was mostly
This storm is
ozone
wild,
and
but the
terpene,
pasta smells
and I
amazing.
insisted
Yeah,
was
it's
mostly
perfect.
magic,
Bread's
and he
almost
said
ready.
those were
Great.
not mutually exclusive.
This is perfect. Just what we
It
needed.
was easy.
Yeah, it's
It
so
was
cozy.
good.
Cheers to
It
that.
was exactly
Cheers
what I had
to
been
us.
afraid
To us.
it would be, easy and good.
I've been
and
holding this in
quietly
for so
devastating,
long.
the way only the
It
most
feels like a weight
comfortable
is
things
lifting.
can be when you know they are built on something you cannot say out loud. We reached a high ridgeline around noon. The view from the top was everything the view from the cabin had been, and then more. The whole valley spread below us, the mountains stepping away in every direction, a hawk turning slow circles in the thermals below where we stood. We ate the sandwiches Marco had packed, sitting on a flat boulder with our legs dangling, the wind cold and clean against our faces. I used to come to mountains with my dad, Marco said. He was looking out at the distance. When I was a kid, before things got complicated. I looked at him. Marco did not talk about his father often. Complicated how? He picked at the edge of his sandwich wrapper. He had a lot of expectations, who I should be, what my life should look like. A small, careful pause. I spent a long time trying to be that version, the version he expected. And now I asked quietly. He looked at me then, direct, level, with that particular expression I was starting to recognize as the one he wore when he was saying something real. Now I'm trying to figure out who I actually am, which turns out to be a longer project than I planned. The wind moved between us. I thought about my own version of that project. The years of being exactly
be
who everyone
honest with you.
expected, competent, cheerful,
not easy for me
to
to
be
say.
around, neatly contained. The things I had left unexplored because exploring them felt too risky, too loud, too much. Yeah, I said, I know what that project is like. Something shifted in his expression, something opened slightly. I know you do, he said softly. We sat with that for a while. The hawk below us caught a thermal and rose without effort until it was level with us, and then above us, and then gone. We came down the mountain in the late afternoon with the light going amber and horizontal through the trees, casting long shadows across the trail. We were maybe 20 minutes from the cabin when the sky changed. Not gradually, all at once. The way mountain weather moves, the light dropped out. The temperature
It's hard
fell
to
several
face,
degrees
but
in
I have
what
to be
felt
honest
like
with
seconds,
myself about
and
this.
a wind came through
It's
the
the only way
trees with
forward.
actual weight behind it, bending the tops of the pines in slow unison. That's not good, Marco said, looking up. How not good? Move faster. We moved faster, we did not make it. The
I know
rain
it's
started as a
difficult,
cold
but we have
mist
to
and
face it.
became, within about 3
Trust me,
minutes,
this is the right
serious
path.
mountain downpour mixed with hail the size of garden peas that stung wherever it hit bare skin. We ran the last half-mile back to the cabin, arriving on the porch soaked, breathless, and laughing in the slightly unhinged way that comes from genuine mild disaster. Inside, we shed wet jackets and boots. Marco got the fireplace going with the efficient
I was thinking about our
confidence of
first
someone
date.
who had done this before.
The Italian place?
I
You were
found
so
dry
nervous.
clothes
I
in my
was.
bag and
But it was
changed.
worth it.
And when I came back downstairs, he was crouched in front of the fire in a dry flannel shirt with his dark hair still damp and pushed back from his face. And the firelight on his features did something very specific and very unfair. I looked at the fire instead. There's a weather alert, he said, checking his phone. Flash flood watch. They're saying don't drive the mountain roads until morning. So we're here. We're here, he confirmed. He looked up at me. Is that okay? Marco, yes, I'm not upset about being stuck in a beautiful cabin with a fireplace. He smiled, good. We made dinner together in the small kitchen, moving around each other in the easy
what is it?
choreography of two people who had shared spaces for years. Music from his phone on the kitchen counter, rain hammering the windows, the fire building warmth from the other room. It was the kind of evening that has its own specific quality, sealed
All right,
off,
gears
suspended
loaded.
outside of ordinary time.
Ready
Like
to hit the
storm
road.
had put a glass jar over the cabin.
Feel the rhythm, let it take
Temporary
control.
pause.
Drumming to the beat, I'm
He
heart and
talked more
soul.
over
Singing
dinner,
out loud,
longer,
feeling whole.
slower, more serious than the night before. He told me about his last relationship. A woman named Claire, who was wonderful and smart and kind, and who had ended things 6 months ago by saying, gently but clearly, I don't think you're here. Not really. I think part of you is somewhere else and I don't know where, and I think you don't either. He said she was right. He said that had been the most useful thing anyone had ever said to him, even though it had taken him months to hear it properly. I listened. I was very good at listening to Marco. I had made it an art form. Can I ask you something? I said, and my voice came out quieter than I intended. You can always ask me anything, he said. I turned my glass in my hands. Do you know where the somewhere else is? He looked at me for a long moment. The firelight moved across his face. The rain hit the windows in irregular waves. I think I'm starting to, he said slowly. I think it's been right in front of me for a long time and I've been really, genuinely committed to not seeing it. Something in his tone made my chest do a long, complicated thing. I put down my glass carefully. Marco. Eli, he said my name with a weight I had not heard before. Can I tell you something, and can you just let me finish before you say anything? My heart was doing something it had no business doing. Okay, I said. He looked at the table, he looked at the fire,
Did that bring
he
up
looked
any
at me.
memories for you?
I've been doing a lot of thinking this year
did.
about why things don't fit, why I can be with someone who is perfectly good and still feel like I'm slightly outside of it looking in through glass. He paused, and I keep coming back to this one thing, this one specific thing, and it scares me honestly because it changes everything I thought I knew about myself and I don't. He stopped, exhaled. I don't know how to say this to you. You can say it, I said quietly. My voice was barely there. Every time something good happens, he said very carefully, you're the first person I want to tell. Every time something is hard,
I was
you're
just
the person
thinking
I want
how
there. When
peaceful
I imagined
it is
this
out
weekend,
here.
I didn't imagine it with
Yeah,
anyone
it
else.
really
I've
clears the
never
mind,
imagined
doesn't it?
anything important with anyone else. He looked at me, and I think I've been telling myself that's just friendship. That's just how close we are. But I don't think I think that's something else. The rain was loud, the fire crackled, everything else was entirely still. I don't know what I am, he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the last word, honest and vulnerable in a way I had
This
never
trail
heard
is
from him
incredible.
before.
Yeah,
I don't know
perfect
what
light
any
for a
of this
hike.
means yet,
Totally.
but I know
Let's
that
keep
when I
going.
try to picture a life that actually feels like mine, you're in it, differently than you're in it now. And I don't know if that's something you. Marco, I said.
¡La lluvia! ¡Tenemos
He
que
stopped.
apurarnos!
I
¡Sí, el
have been
cielo
in
está
love
oscuro!
with you, I
¡Vamos!
said, for 4 years. The silence
We're
that
almost
followed
there.
was the loudest
This rain
thing
is
I had
crazy!
ever
We're
experienced.
soaked!
He
Best run
stared
ever!
at me. I watched his expression move
We
through
made it.
several things
That rain
very
was
quickly,
insane.
shock,
I'm
and then
soaked.
something
Me too.
softer,
So fun,
and
though.
then something that looked impossibly like relief. 4 years, he repeated. 4 years, I confirmed. I have been very disciplined about it. He laughed, short and disbelieving, and then he covered
This
his
storm
face
is
with
wild,
both
but the
hands
pasta
for a
smells
moment,
amazing.
And when he
Yeah,
lowered
it's
them,
perfect.
his eyes
Bread's
were
almost
wet
ready.
just
Great.
slightly, and he was smiling.
This is perfect. Just what
I'm
we
an
needed.
idiot, he said.
Yeah, it's so cozy.
You're
Cheers
not
to
an
that.
idiot, I
Cheers.
said. You
To
didn't
us.
know.
To us.
I should have known.
I've been
He
holding
reached
this in
across
for
the
so
table,
long.
And his hand covered mine.
feels
and
like a
I
weight
sat
is
very
lifting.
Still because Marco Reyes was holding my hand across a dinner table in a firelit cabin while a storm moved over the mountain, and every careful rule I had made for myself over 4 years simply ceased to exist. I'm sorry it took me this long, he said. Don't be sorry, I said. My voice was doing things I could not control. Just be sure. He looked at me with those dark eyes, steady and open and more present than I had ever seen him. I'm not sure what I am yet, he said honestly. I'm sure about you. And somehow that was enough. We stayed at the table for a long time. Not talking about everything at once, the way you might expect, not rushing through all the questions and answers and explanations and what does this means. We just stayed there in the warmth of the fire and the sound of the storm, and we talked the way people talk when the most important thing has already been said and everything else can come at its own pace. He asked me when I first knew. I told him honestly, a rainy afternoon in year 1 of our friendship, watching him fix something in my apartment with focused, unhurried competence, and feeling something in my chest go, oh, that's going to be a problem. He laughed quietly and warmly, like the memory was precious to him too, now that it had been given new context. I asked him when he started to wonder.
I want to be
He thought
honest
about it
with you.
carefully, the way he did
It's
with
not easy
things
for
that
me to
mattered.
say.
I think, he said slowly, there were signs for a long time that I walked past pretty quickly. Things I filed as close friendship because that was the container I had available. He paused. After Claire, after what she said about me being somewhere else, I started actually looking at where I was going when I drifted, and it was always here, always you. That's a lot to sit with, I said. It was, he agreed. It still is, but it's also, he searched for the word, it's also the first thing in a long time that feels like the truth. Outside, the storm had softened from drama to something steadier. A deep, consistent rain with no more hail, the wind gentled, the thunder moved off into the distance. The cabin felt very small and very safe, the way small spaces
It's hard to
can when the
face,
weather
but I have
outside
to be
gives you
honest with
permission to
myself
stay
about
inside
this.
them.
It's the only
I
way
want to be
forward.
honest with you about something, Marco said. I'm new to this, not to you, to whatever this is about me. I don't have a map. I don't need you to have a map. I said, I might need more time to understand what I
know
am,
it's difficult,
what this means
but we
for
have to
how
face
I see
it.
myself.
Trust me, this is the
Marco,
right
I
path.
looked at him. You spent 37 minutes once helping me choose between two nearly identical shades of blue for a client logo. I have significant patience for your process. He laughed, real and full, the laugh I loved most. And then he looked at me with something quiet and certain behind his eyes. Can I ask you something kind of
You know, I was thinking
enormous?
about our first date.
Sure.
The Italian place,
Can I
you were
just
so
he
nervous.
stopped,
I
started
was,
again.
but it was
Can
worth
I
it.
sit next to you? It was such a simple thing to ask. Such a careful, specific, entirely Marco thing to ask, not assuming, not leaping, just asking for exactly what he wanted in the most uncomplicated terms possible. Yes, I said, obviously yes. He moved from his side of the table to mine. He sat beside me on the old wooden bench, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, and he leaned back against the wall behind us, and after a moment I leaned my head against his shoulder, and he turned his head so that his cheek rested against my hair. We sat like that while the rain came down outside and the fire settled into its lower, long-burning stage. It did not feel like a beginning, exactly.
Oh,
It
what is
felt
it?
like something that had been there for a long time, finally being allowed to be itself. We fell asleep on the couch near the fireplace sometime after midnight, not planned. Just the natural end of a long
All
and
right,
enormous
gears
day,
loaded.
warmth and exhaustion and
Ready to hit
emotional
the road.
gravity pulling us towards sleep.
Feel the rhythm, let it take
Briefly, at some
control.
point, he
Drumming
finds
to the
his
beat,
arm
I'm
around my
heart and soul.
shoulders and my
Singing
hand
out loud,
loosely
feel
gripping
whole.
his, and the fire down to red coals and the rain still falling softly. I lay there for a moment, awake in the dark, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt like I was not carrying something alone. Sunday morning came in gray and clean and quietly luminous. The storm had emptied itself overnight. What it left behind was a world washed new, the pines dark with moisture, every surface beaded with water, the air so fresh and cold it almost had a taste. The valley below the cabin was wrapped in low cloud, and above it the mountains were half hidden and enormous and unhurried. I woke before Marco. I made coffee in the small kitchen, moving quietly, and stood at the main window with my mug and watched the morning come. There was a particular stillness in it, not emptiness, the other kind of stillness, the kind that is full of something. I thought about the version of me who had stood at this same window 2 days ago, watching the same valley, carrying the same 4-year-old weight. How different the room felt now. How different I felt, not lighter exactly, because everything was still uncertain and new and would require careful tending, but less alone. Significantly, structurally less alone. You made coffee. Marco's voice thick with sleep from the staircase. He came down in a rumpled flannel shirt with his hair uncombed
bring
and
up
his
any
eyes
memories
not
for you?
fully open, and he
Yeah,
looked so completely and normally himself that something in my chest did a warm, uncomplicated thing. I made coffee, I confirmed. He went to the kitchen and poured himself a mug and came to stand beside me at the window. We looked at the cloud-wrapped valley together. His shoulder was warm against mine. How are you? He asked quietly. It was a simple question. Given everything, it was the right one. I'm good, I said, and
I
I
was
meant
just
it
thinking how
completely, not as
peaceful
a
it is
performance,
out here.
not as a management of
Yeah, it
anything,
really clears
just
the
as
mind,
a
doesn't it?
plain and accurate description of what was true. How are you? He was quiet for a moment. I could feel him thinking carefully the way he did. Scared, he said, a little, of not knowing all the answers yet, a pause, but also really, genuinely glad. Glad is good, I said. Glad is very good.
This trail is incredible.
Reached down and
Yeah,
found my
perfect
free
light for a
hand
hike.
without looking
Totally.
at it, the
Let's
way
keep
you
going.
reach for something you already know is there. His fingers closed around mine. Easy, sure. We stood like that while the clouds shifted over the valley
Tenemos que
and the
apurarnos.
morning light
Sí, el
slowly
cielo está
strengthened.
oscuro. Vamos.
We did not solve everything that weekend.
We're almost there.
I want to be clear
This
about
rain is
that
crazy.
because the
We're
stories
soaked.
that say two
Best
people
run ever.
fall into each other and immediately everything
We made
becomes
it.
simple
That
are
rain
not
was
doing
insane.
anyone
I'm
any
soaked.
favors.
Me too. So
What
fun
we did
though.
was begin. On the drive home, Marco was quieter than usual, thoughtful in that way he had when he was processing something real, filing it properly, making sure he understood it before he moved forward. I gave him the space
This
for
storm
it.
is
I was
wild,
good
but the
at
pasta
space.
smells amazing.
I had, after
Yeah,
all,
it's
been
perfect.
giving him
Bread's
space
almost ready.
inside my
Great.
own heart for 4 years.
This is perfect. Just what we
About an
needed.
hour from
Yeah,
the
it's so
city, he
cozy.
said,
Cheers to
"I
that.
want to do this
Cheers
right."
to us. To us.
Do what right? This,
I've been
us,
holding this in for
whatever
so
this is
long.
becoming. He glanced
It feels
at
like a
me.
weight is
I don't want to
lifting.
rush through figuring out what I am just to get to the part where I can hold your hand. I want to actually know. Does that make sense? It makes complete sense, I said. I also want to hold your hand, he added. That also makes sense. I'm going to talk to someone, a therapist maybe, work some things out with someone who isn't directly involved. That is an excellent and mature idea. I learned maturity from someone. He glanced at me again briefly with a small smile, mostly from watching you handle things better than I would have. I looked out the window so he would not see how much that landed. Eli, he said. Meh. Thank you for not running from this. I thought about the 4 years of carefully maintained rules, the managed carrying, the practiced quiet. I thought about what it had cost and what it had preserved and whether any of it had been necessary or whether it had just been fear wearing the costume of wisdom. Thank you, I said, for finally seeing it. He was quiet for a moment, then soft and certain. I always saw it, I just needed time to understand what I was looking at. 3 months later, on a Thursday evening in January, Marco called me. Hey, he said, I
want
talked
to
to my
be honest
therapist
with
today.
you.
Yeah, how was
It's not
it?
easy for me to say.
Good, really good, actually. A pause, the particular kind that had something in it. She asked me what made me happiest, like genuinely, sustainably happy, not just excited. What did you say? I said, sitting on Eli's couch watching terrible movies and arguing about whether the first or third act is worse. A beat. She said that sounded like something worth honoring. I was smiling before I could stop it. She sounds wise. She's great. She also said I should stop overthinking and just call you. He paused. So I'm calling you. You're calling me, I confirmed. I know what I am, he said quietly, and there was something new in his voice, not resolved exactly, because these things are never simply resolved but settled.
It's hard to
Inhabited,
face,
like a person
but I
who
have
is
to be
found
honest with
after a
myself
long
about
search
this.
where they actually live.
It's the only way
I'm still
forward.
figuring out the vocabulary for it, but I know what I am, and I know what I want. Marco. I said, my voice was very full of something. I want to take you somewhere, he said. Dinner, something real, if
I know it's difficult, but we have
Yes,
to
I
face
said.
it.
I haven't
Trust me,
finished
this is the
asking.
right path.
The answer is yes. A pause, and then that laugh, low and surprised and entirely real, filling the phone like it filled rooms. Like it had always filled the specific room inside my chest that I had been saving, apparently, for exactly this. Friday, he said. Friday, I said. I do not
You know,
know
I was thinking
exactly
about our
what kind
first
of love
date.
story this is
The
in
Italian
all the
place, you were
technical
so
senses.
nervous. I was,
I do not know all
but it
the
was
words
worth it.
Marco will find for himself, or how long the finding will take, or all the shapes this thing between us will take as it grows. I imagine it will be complicated at times and uncertain and require more patience and more honesty than either of us fully knows how to give yet. But here is what I do know. I know that for 4 years I carried something quietly and alone because I believed that was the only responsible option. And I know that one rainy night on a mountain, in a firelit cabin with the storm outside and the coals burning low, someone I loved looked at me and told me the truth about himself.
It's hard
about
to
me,
face,
about the something
but I have to
else
be
that had
honest
been
with
living
myself
between us
about
all
this.
along.
It's the only
And
way
I know
forward.
that when he called me on a Thursday in January with a settled voice and a question he already knew the answer to, I said yes.
You know, I was thinking
before he
about
could
our first
finish
date.
asking.
The Italian place,
Because
you were
that
so
is what
nervous.
you do
I
when
was,
love
but it was
finally
worth it.
stops being a secret and becomes, instead, something you are allowed to hold in both hands. You say yes.
You know, I was thinking about our
You say
first date.
yes and you mean it.
The Italian
and you do
place,
not
you were
build
so
a
nervous.
wall
I
around the
was,
meaning.
but it was worth it.
And it is, even with all its uncertainty and all its newness, the easiest thing you have ever done.